Alright, the 2024 Player's Handbook has totally reworked character creation, and they have made backgrounds actually pretty important. So instead of a background just being a little bit of roleplay suggestion, a few pieces of gold, some little trinkets, and a couple skill proficiencies, and a feature that nobody ever remembered to use. So your origin is your species, which replaced race. It never really made sense that they tried to say that Dragonborn and Gnome were the same species but different races. So I'm glad that they changed that nomenclature. And your background. Background gives you your ability score bonus now. You can choose from 3 specific ability scores depending on the background you choose, and you still get a couple of skill proficiencies, you get a tool proficiency, and you get a feat. A specific group of feats called origin feats, but each background has a specific feat tied to it. So the background you choose ties you into only being able to pick from 3 abilities to increase, and you get a +2 to 1 and a +1 to 1. And you get the specific feat that is tied to that background. So your background actually does have a really strong influence on how your character mechanically functions in the game. So I'm going to go over the origin feats first, so you know exactly how they function, what the new ones are, and how the old ones have been changed if they've been changed. And then once we get through that, I'll explain each of the backgrounds. That way you know what each one of these feats does and how it contributes to that background's overall usefulness. The first origin feat is Alert. It has been tied to Criminal and Guard, and it has gotten a pretty significant nerf. You no longer get a +5 to Initiative. You get to add your proficiency bonus to Initiative. And you are no longer immune to being surprised, and you are no longer immune to creatures having advantage on attacks against you if they're hidden from you. But you can change position with another willing ally in initiative order as long as neither one of you is incapacitated. So that can be really useful, but overall it's a huge nerf. It's basically because they completely changed how surprise works. Now if a creature is surprised at the start of combat, they don't miss a whole turn, they just have disadvantage on initiative. The next origin feat is called Crafter. It is completely new. It is tied to the Artisan background. And what you do with this is you get proficiency with 3 different Artisan's tools from the fast crafting table, and I'll throw that up here. Whenever you buy a non-magical item, you get a 20% discount. And whenever you finish a long rest, you can craft one of the things from that table, assuming that you have the Artisan tools to do it, and it lasts until you finish another long rest, at which point it falls apart, and you can either remake it or make a different item from this table. Which, when I have a player that has this feat in my games, I will allow them to expand on this list and think of other things they could possibly craft, and as long as it makes sense, I will allow it. The next origin feat is Healer. You get it with the Hermit background, and it has been completely reworked. They got rid of the, if you use it to stabilize a creature, they get 1 HP, because if you heal a creature, they're no longer unconscious. So why would you stabilize a creature and give them 1 HP when you could just heal them and give them more HP and they're no longer unconscious? And when you heal somebody with a healer's kit, you don't do 1d6 plus 4. You give them the chance to roll a hit die, and they heal that number rolled plus your proficiency bonus. The next origin feat is Lucky. It's the exact same. It's the lucky feat we all know and either love or hate. You get it with either the Merchant or the Wayfarer background. And it's the same as it always has been. Anytime you roll a d20, you can give yourself advantage. And anytime a creature attacks you, you can impose disadvantage. You get 3 points a day. They come back on a long rest. The next origin feat is Magic Initiate. It has gotten a slight nerf. It's tied to the Acolyte background, which gives you the Cleric version, the Guide background, which gives you the Druid version, and the Sage background, which gives you the Wizard version. You still get to pick 2 cantrips, but you can only choose from the Cleric, the Druid, or the Wizard spell list. You no longer get to pick from the Bard, the Sorcerer, or the Warlock spell list. You still get a first level spell from the same spell list, and you can still cast it once per day. But the old version did not specify that you could cast this first level spell without a spell slot. It didn't specify that you could use your other spell slots to cast it if you wanted to, and it didn't say that you could change it anytime that you level up. Those things have all been included in the new version. And based on the wording, it says that you can choose Wisdom, Intelligence, or Charisma as the ability score for these spells, and it doesn't say that it is, if you pick Cleric, it's Wisdom, if you pick Wizard, it's Intelligence, if you pick Druid, whatever. It says you can pick any of these 3 ability scores and any of these 3 classes to choose from the list. So those 2 things aren't tied together anymore. The next origin feat is another totally new feat. It's called Musician. It's tied to the Entertainer background. You get proficiency with 3 musical instruments, and when you finish a short or a long rest, you can play a little ditty, and a number of creatures up to your proficiency bonus gets heroic inspiration. The next origin feat is Savage Attacker. It is tied to the Soldier background, and it is exactly the same. Once per turn, you can roll a weapon's damage dice twice and take the higher number. The next origin feat is Skilled. It is tied to the Charlatan, the Noble, and the Scribe backgrounds, and it's identical to the old version. You just get proficiency with any 3 skills of your choice. The next origin feat is Tavern Brawler. It's tied to the Sailor background, and it has been slightly reworked. You still get 1d4 plus strength for unarmed strikes. You are still proficient with improvised weapons. But now you can re-roll 1s on damage you do with unarmed strike or improvised weapons. And instead of getting to choose if you want to use a bonus action to try and grapple an enemy, that you can push an enemy you damage with this 5 feet away from you once per turn. The last origin feat is Tough. It's tied to the Farmer background. It's exactly the same as it's always been. You get plus 2 HP for every level you have when you get it, and you get plus 2 HP every time you gain a level after that. So there are some new backgrounds, and there are some that you're used to, but they are all going to be slightly different than what you've seen before. The first background is Acolyte. It's narratively the same. You grew up in a temple, you learned religion. With every background, you get 1 ability score, you get a plus 2, you get 1, you get a plus 1. For Acolyte, you have to choose between Wisdom, Intelligence, and Charisma. Your origin feat is the Cleric version of Magic Initiate. You get skill proficiency with Insight and Religion, and you get tool proficiency with Calligrapher's Tools. For each background, you get a group of starter items. You get the tool that you're proficient with, a couple other little things, and a chunk of gold, or you get 50 pieces of gold, your choice, for every background. The next background is Artisan. It basically replaces Guild Artisan, but narratively it's the same. The book talks about how you started out cleaning the floors and cleaning the counters for an artisan, and eventually you worked your way up to train with the artisan, and now you have developed your own skill. The ability scores that you get to choose from are Strength, Dexterity, and Intelligence. You get the Crafter feat. You're proficient in Investigation and Persuasion, and you're proficient with 1 type of Artisan's tools. The next background is Charlatan. It's narratively the same as it used to be. You're basically a con man. You have some sort of trick you use to take advantage of people. You get to choose from Dexterity, Constitution, and Charisma for your ability score bonuses. You get the Skilled feat. You are proficient with Dexterity and Sleight of Hand, and you're proficient with a Forgery kit. The next background is Criminal. You grew up in the seedy underbelly of a city committing crimes. No high-level stuff, just low-level criminal business. The 3 ability scores you get to choose from are Dexterity, Constitution, and Intelligence. You get the Alert origin feat. You're proficient with Stealth and Sleight of Hand, and you get Thieves' Tools proficiency. The next background is Entertainer. You grew up performing with a traveling troupe or some other version of entertainment, and you learned from the people that were older than you. Strength, Dexterity, and Charisma are the ability scores you can choose from. You get the Musician origin feat. You're proficient in the acrobatics and performance skills, and you are proficient with 1 type of musical instrument. The next background is Farmer. You grew up on a farm. You learned the usefulness of land and animals and cultivating those things. Humble beginnings. You get to choose from the Strength, Constitution, or Wisdom ability scores to increase. Your origin feat is Tough. You're proficient with Animal Handling and Nature, and you get Carpenter's Tools proficiency. The next background is Guard. It's basically City Watch from before. Strength, Intelligence, and Wisdom are the ability scores you can choose to increase. You get the origin feat Alert. You are proficient in athletics and perception, and you're proficient with one type of gaming set. The next background is Guide. You grew up in the wilds, you're familiar with the areas outside of town, and you have guided nature priests and other folks through the wilderness and have developed skills of that nature. The ability scores you get to choose from are Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom, and you have the Druid version of the Magic Initiate origin feat. You're proficient with Stealth and Survival, and the tools you're proficient with are Cartographer's tools. The next background is Hermit. You grew up far away from anybody else, either in like a monastery or in a hut out in the middle of nowhere. You have been isolated for a long time. Constitution, Wisdom, and Charisma are the ability scores you get to choose from. I think it's a little funny that a hermit can increase his charisma, but hey. You get the Healer origin feat. Medicine and Religion are the skills you're proficient with, and you're proficient with an herbalism kit. The next background is Merchant. You have worked in shops in a big city, or you've traveled with caravans, or you've been involved in import-export. Either way, you've had a life in the business world. Constitution, Intelligence, and Charisma are the ability scores that you can increase, and you get the Lucky origin feat. You're proficient with Animal Handling and Persuasion, and you get Navigator's Tools proficiency. The next background is Noble. You grew up in a castle or an aristocrat's mansion. You are used to the trappings of high society. Strength, Intelligence, and Charisma are the ability scores you can increase, and you get the Skilled origin feat. You're proficient with History and Persuasion, and you get one gaming set proficiency. The next background is Sage. You are a learned scholar. Constitution, Intelligence, and Wisdom are the ability scores you can increase, and you get the Wizard version of the Magic Initiate origin feat. You are proficient with Arcana and History, and you get Calligrapher's Tools proficiency. The next background is Sailor. You're used to having the wind in your sails and the deck swaying beneath your feet, and you're comfortable in the seedy dockside bars spread around the coastline. You can choose from Strength, Dexterity, and Wisdom as the ability scores you can increase, and you get the Tavern Brawler origin feat. You are proficient with Acrobatics and Perception, and you get Navigator's Tools proficiency. The next background is Scribe. You've spent years transcribing great works of literature and have developed your own skills with either poetry or narrative writing. Either way, you know that the pen is mightier than the sword. Dexterity, Intelligence, and Wisdom are the ability scores that you can increase, and Skilled is your origin feat. You have proficiency in Investigation and Perception, and you are proficient with Calligrapher's Tools. The next background is Soldier. You're used to the dregs of war, and you're used to the routine and daily maintenance that comes with being a soldier. Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution are the ability scores you can choose from to increase, and you get the Savage Attacker origin feat. You are proficient with Athletics and Intimidation, and you're proficient with one type of gaming set. The last background is Wayfarer. They basically just changed the word urchin to wayfarer. I don't know why, but I do like the word wayfarer. You grew up in the streets, you know what it's like to be hungry, really hungry, the way most people never feel. And even though sometimes you had to resort to theft to survive, you knew that you had a brighter fate awaiting someday. Dexterity, Wisdom, and Charisma are the ability scores you can increase, and Lucky is your origin feat. You're proficient with Insight and Stealth, and you're proficient with Thieves' Tools. If you've made it this far, throw me a like. If you want to keep up with current events in the D&D world, any of my campaign walkthroughs, feel free to subscribe. If you're interested in dice, blind bag dice, or any other D&D accessories, feel free to go to mysterydicegoblin.com/dadthedungeonmaster. If you use promo code dadthedungeonmaster, you get 15% off of your total order. Here's some other videos I've done you might like. Thanks, guys.